are looking at Revelation chapter 7, verse 13 and 14, where we are seeking to understand why we are studying this subject. Because here the question of the elders to John is, what are these which are arrayed in white robes, and whence came they? And I said unto him, Sir, thou knowest. And he said to me, These are they which came out of great tribulation, and have washed their robes, and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. Here the 144,000 are being described as a people who are going through great tribulation. And why? So that they would wash their robes and make them white in the blood of the Lamb. So that their robes of character will be made white, purified through this experience. And the question is, when is this text applicable? From what time period does this commence? And we have already studied in the past that it's the period of the three angels' messages. The sealing angel is the third angel. But let Sister White, in the spirit of prophecy here, make it very vivid. In Testimony Volume 5, where I'm reading from, on page 215, paragraph 4, where it says, It is now that we must keep ourselves and our children unspotted from the world. It is now that we must wash our robes of character and make them white in the blood of the Lamb. That was in Sister White's time, in Testimony Volume 5 was around 1888. So it is now, she says, that we are to wash our robes of character and make them white in the blood of the Lamb. It is now that we must overcome pride, passion, spiritual slothfulness. It is now that we must awake and make determined effort for symmetry of character. Today, if you will hear his voice, harden not your hearts. We are in a most trying position, waiting, watching for our Lord's appearing. The world is in darkness, but you, brethren, says Paul, are not in darkness, that day should overtake you as a thief. It is ever God's purpose to bring, now follow carefully here, this is what we're studying about, to bring light out of darkness, joy out of sorrow, and rest and weariness for the waiting, longing soul. As we've been studying so far, the sons of Jacob went through terrible trying experiences through which they were purged and purified. And that is the sealing of the 144,000 typified in these sons. And so here it is, in this dark and trying hour, while the world lies in darkness, we are to be intelligent as to what we must be going through at this time. And that's what our study is all about. We must overcome pride, passion, spiritual slothfulness. We must awake and make determined effort for symmetry of character. We are in a most trying position, waiting and watching for our Lord's appearing. What are you doing, brethren, in the great work of preparation? Those who are uniting with the world are receiving the worldly mold and preparing for the mark of the beast. those who are distrustful of self, who are humbling themselves before God, here it is, and purifying their souls by what? Obeying the truth. These are receiving the heavenly mold and preparing for the seal of God in their foreheads. That's what is our experience as we are studying the tribe by tribe. When the decree goes forth, the stamp is impressed, their character will remain pure and spotless for eternity. Now is the time to prepare. The seal of God will never be placed upon the forehead of an impure man or woman, etc. So now's the time. And that was in Sister White's time through to now. And how will God do this work? How will he accomplish to bring light out of darkness and out of the unpleasantries of life a joy and a peace? How will he do that? So I read here from That I May Know Him. Page 350, reading there paragraph 3. The day is coming, and it is close upon us, when every phase of character will be revealed by special temptation. Those who remain true to principle, who exercise faith to the end, will be those who have proved true under test and trial during the previous hours of their probation, and have formed characters after the likeness of Christ. It will be those who have cultivated close acquaintance with Christ, who through his wisdom and grace are partakers of the divine nature. But no human being can give to another heart devotion and noble qualities of mind and supply his deficiency with moral power. No human being can give it to us. It is our personal, individual attention to these matters. I can't do it for you, you can't do it for me. As I share God's word with you, it's up to you with what you do with it. Because after you read this and you see, and after you study it, you see where your character is, it's up to you to take this on. And in this present time, before probation closes, going through battles and experiences that purify us. That's how God does it. Character is being prepared by the trials and temptations. And then temptations will come to show what sort of a character we have, so we can keep on dealing with the purification. And so, one of the things that I read there, overcome passion. Are we sometimes very passionate people, acting on passion rather than intellect? Well, we must overcome that. And in our study of this tribe, Simeon's tribe, we will understand how passion will be overcome. What was the inheritance, what was the DNA that was passed on to Simeon from his mother? Genesis 29:33. What was his mother? Who was his mother, and what was her agony of spirit that would be passed on through the deoxyribonucleic acid, DNA, the genetic chemistry? Here it is in Genesis 29, verse 33. And she conceived Leah. This is Leah. She had given birth to Reuben. And now she conceived again and bare a son and said, because the Lord hath heard that I was hated, he hath therefore given me this son also. And she called his name Simeon. So what was his inheritance? She felt that she was not being loved, that she felt that she was being hated. There was this agony inside of her spirit that she was in the throes of this awful sensation, and she gave birth. She was conceiving and gave birth finally to a son called Simeon. What sort of inheritance do you think he received? What sort of a chemistry? And as we look at his experience, what character did he reveal in the time of temptation? Remember, we just read it there, that I may know him. Temptations will reveal certain character. So what was the temptation that came upon Simeon in which his particular character became revealed? For this we turn to Genesis 34. Genesis 34, reading there verse 1. And Dinah, the daughter of Leah, which she bare unto Jacob, went out to see the daughters of the land. And when Shechem, the son of Hamor, the Hivite, prince of the country, saw her, he took her, and lay with her, and defiled her. And his soul clave unto Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, and he loved the damsel, and spake kindly unto the damsel. And Shechem spake unto his father Hamor, saying, Get me this damsel to wife. And so the story came through to Jacob and the sons. And we pick it up again for time's sake in verse 13. And the sons of Jacob answered Shechem and Hamor his father deceitfully, and said, Because he had defiled Dinah their sister. And they said unto them, We cannot do this thing to give our sister to one that is uncircumcised, for that were a reproach unto us. So here is the temptation that was before them. How are they going to react to the fact that their sister was defiled? And now that this heathen nation wanted, the nobility wanted to marry their sister. So what did they say? Sorry, that can't happen unless you are circumcised. But in this will we consent unto you, if you will be as we be, that every male of you be circumcised. Then we will give our daughters unto you, and we will take your daughters to us, and we will dwell with you, and we will become one people. But if you will not hearken unto us to be circumcised, then will we take our daughter, and we will be gone. And their words pleased Hamor and Shechem, Hamor's son. And the young man deferred not to do the thing, because he had delight in Jacob's daughter, and he was more honourable than all the house of his father. So Shechem was a very honourable young man. So he did it very quickly. He did what was required of him. And Hamor and Shechem his son came unto the gate of their city, and communed with the men of their city, saying, These are peaceable with us, therefore let them dwell in the land and trade therein. So they made a pact with them. Now come to verse 24. And unto Hamor and unto Shechem his son hearkened all that went out of the gate of his city, and every male was circumcised, all that went out of the gate of his city. And it came to pass on the third day, when they were sore, 3 days after the circumcision, very painful for men, that 2 of the sons of Jacob, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brethren, took each man his sword and came upon the city boldly and slew all the males. And they slew Hamor and Shechem his son with the edge of the sword, and took Dinah out of Shechem's house and went out. Sons of Jacob came upon the slain and spoiled the city, because they had defiled their sister. What a gory story. Now, did Simeon and Levi feel justified in what they were doing? It was a temptation, wasn't it? These defiling pagans, they've just defiled our sister. Well, how are we going to deal with this? That's a very shrewd operation, isn't it? Falsehood? By suggesting, well, yes, you can have our sister if you become circumcised, and then they catch them out in the weakest time of their experience. Cruelty. And although they felt justified, we read here in Genesis chapter 34, verses 30 and 31. And Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, "You have troubled me to make me to stink among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites and the Perizzites. And I, being few in number, they shall gather themselves together against me and slay me, and I shall be destroyed, I and my house." And they said, "Should he deal with our sister as with an harlot?" You can see how justifying they were. We've done the right thing. We're going to permit our sister to be treated like a harlot? You know, we can justify our cruelty, can't we? That's what Simeon did. And many times this particular characteristic comes out in God's people and Christians. Something is being done that is not right, and they are tempted to react to that in a cruel manner. Is that right? Let's read from the spirit of prophecy here in Patriarchs and Prophets. Patriarchs and Prophets, page 204, reading there from paragraph 3 and 4. It says, "The treacherous cruelty of Simeon and Levi was not unprovoked. Yet, in their course toward the Shechemites, they committed a grievous sin. They had carefully concealed from Jacob their intentions, and the tidings of their revenge filled him with horror. Heartsick at the deceit and violence of his sons, he only said, 'You have troubled me to make me to stink among the inhabitants of the land.'" She quotes his words. "But the grief and abhorrence with which he regarded their bloody deed is shown by the words in which nearly 50 years later he referred to it as he lay upon his deathbed in Egypt. 'Simeon and Levi are brethren, instruments of cruelty are in their habitations. O my soul, come not thou into their secret, unto their assembly. Mine honour, be not thou united. Cursed be their anger, for it was fierce, and their wrath, for it was cruel.'" So those were the words when he came to deal with these two sons. And as this cruelty which temptation brought to the forefront, this cruel and treacherous falsehood that they practiced, how did that come forth as well later on? Let's come there to Genesis 37, 18 to 20. Here was the story of Joseph as he came to be with his brethren, bringing them provision as they were looking after the sheep. When they saw him afar off, even before he came near unto them, now remember they were jealous over him, and the DNA in these boys, the cruelty which was passed on through the genetical DNA, the particular agony of Leah, everything connected, you can see how it's all interconnected here. This trait of character it's a passion that was being expressed. And as they saw Joseph coming, the passion toward him because of their envy about him, because of his shine holy attitude that they interpreted there. And, he was often telling stories about them. They hated him for that. And now was the temptation. Here he is. They said one to another, behold, the dreamer cometh. Come now, therefore, and let us slay him, and cast him into some pit, and we will say some evil beast hath devoured him. Here it is. The cruel nature came back into function again. Sister White writes on page 226 in Patriarchs and Prophets, in the cruel treatment of their brother, Simeon had been the instigator and the chief actor. So as we are looking at this characteristic of this tribe, what would happen to those of the tribe of Simeon with such characters? This is a tribe of this kind of character, of self-justifying cruelty. We've got to treat these sinners in this way. Can some people identify with this attitude? I feel perfectly justified. These are corrupt people. I'll give it to them. This is the Simeonites and the Levites, cruel brethren. Come to Proverbs chapter 25. Proverbs 25, verse 28. Proverbs 28. Here is what is the future of such people. Verse 28. He that hath no rule over his own spirit is like a city that is broken down and without walls. A person who cannot control his own spirit. That was Simeon. That was Levi. He cannot control his own spirit. He is like a city that is broken down without walls. In the days of warfare, that left you wide open to the enemy. Observe the prophecy of Jacob regarding them. What did we read there before from Patriarchs and Prophets already? Genesis 49. Let's refer to it again as we read it there before. Genesis 49, reading from 5 to 7. Simeon and Levi are brethren, instruments of cruelty are in their habitations. O my soul, come not thou into their secret, into their assembly. Mine honour be not thou united. For in their anger they slew a man, and in their self-will they dig down a wall. Cursed be their anger, for it was fierce, and their wrath, for it was cruel. I will divide them in Jacob, and scatter them in Israel. Wow. This is now their blessing. What was that? They will not have a place in Israel as a place where they could say, this is our land. Levi and Simeon. They were like a city without walls. Can you see the symbol there? I'll read it here from the Spirit of Prophecy in Patriarchs and Prophets again, to let this be played out in our understanding. This is now Patriarchs and Prophets, page 235, paragraph 7, where next in age to Reuben were Simeon and Levi. They had been united in their cruelty toward the Shechemites, and they had also been the most guilty. They had been the most guilty in the selling of Joseph. Concerning them it was declared, I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel. At the numbering of Israel, just before their entrance to Canaan, Simeon was the smallest tribe. Moses, in his last blessing, made no reference to Simeon. In the settlement of Canaan, this tribe had only a small portion of Judah's lot. It was Judah's lot, and he had a small portion. And such families as afterwards became powerful formed different colonies and settled in territory outside the borders of the Holy Land. Simeon was a very small people because of this. And they had no place really of their own. They couldn't even settle down in the Holy Land perfectly because they were scattered. So observe their vulnerability when temptation was upon Israel at the hand of Balaam. Because they were the kind of people they were, passionate. When Balaam caused the Hebrews to fall into corruption, what was there? Numbers, let's go there. Numbers 1:23. Those that were numbered of them, even of the tribe of Simeon, were 59,300. 59,300. This was the number of Simeon. Small number. And jumping across to Numbers 25 as to what happened in the time of Balaam. Numbers 25. Verses 1 to 5. Numbers 25, verses 1 to 5. And Israel abode in Shittim, and the people began to commit whoredom with the daughters of Moab. And they called the people unto the sacrifices of their gods. And the people did eat and bow down to their gods. And Israel joined himself unto Baal-Peor, and the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel. And the Lord said unto Moses, take all the heads of the people and hang them up before the Lord against the sun, that the fierce anger of the Lord may be turned away from Israel. And Moses said unto the judges of Israel, slay every one his men that were joined unto Baal-Peor. So what is now the result of this in verse 9. And those that died in the plague were 24,000. So who were some of these most passionate people, and what number was left in Simeon's tribe? Let's go to 26 of Numbers, verse 14. These are the families of Simeonites, 22,200. What was it there that they were before? What did we read in 123 of Numbers? And those that were numbered of the tribe of Simeon was 59,300. And how many were left after the purge? 22,000. Virtually 30,000 were slain of that tribe because of the Balpur dilemma. They could not control themselves, and they lost a lot of men, a lot of their members. So, Patriarchs and Prophets, Sister White writes, at the numbering of Israel, just before their entrance to Canaan, Simeon was the smallest tribe. The curse of the blessing was upon that tribe. And for those of his tribe who respond to God's method of help, what was he and they an example of? So here, this cruel characteristic, God wanted to help them. And when you examine the tribes of the 144,000, is Simeon there? And what is the case in reference to Simeon, the tribe of Simeon? They have to be purged if they're going to be there, right? The time of, as we started in the beginning of our message here, the way by which God purifies a people is through these temptations and through these horrible, terrible experiences. Well, here in Genesis chapter 42, you can see that Simeon was treated in a very special way for him to be brought to acceptance with God and with his brethren. Here in Genesis 42. Here is the example of the purging, purifying experience that these kind of people will go through. Genesis 42, reading there verse 6 and 7. And Joseph was the governor over the land, and he it was that sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brethren came and bowed down themselves before him with their faces to the earth. And Joseph saw his brethren, and he knew them, but made himself strange unto them, and spake roughly unto them. And he said unto them, Whence come ye? And they said, From the land of Canaan, to buy food. So you know the story, how he kept himself hidden behind that Egyptian facade. And verse 17 now, as they went through this interrogation by Joseph, he then did something. Verse 17, he treated them as spies. He took them through some hard times. He put them all together into ward 3 days, into prison 3 days. He treated them as spies. And there they were in the prison. And verse 24 says, And he turned himself about from them and wept, and returned to them again, and communed with them, and took from them Simeon, and bound him before their eyes. What did he pick Simeon out for? They had already been in prison, but he wanted to send them home to give them the food, their father the food. So he took Simeon and bound him. Why? Because Simeon was the instigator of his... He knew that, you see. So here Simeon was being treated very, very severely. He bound him before their eyes. Coming to verse 36. And Jacob, their father, said unto them, Me have you bereaved of my children. Joseph is not, and Simeon is not, and you will take Benjamin away? All these things are against me. Can you imagine the agony of those brothers as they were going through this torturous experience? First in prison. Secondly, Simeon having to stay there in prison while they left. And then to hear the agony of the father. Terrible circumstances, trials, tribulation. This is how it works. This is how the example is given in them, how God's people with their cruel characteristics in character have to be purged through difficult times. They can finally arrive in victory, but this is how it happens. And this example is here enlarged in Patriarchs and Prophets. Patriarchs and Prophets, page 225, paragraph 4, where it says, The 3 days in the Egyptian prison were days of bitter sorrow, as the brothers reflected upon their past sins. Can you see it? Can you see the purging experience? The Lord brings circumstances about so that their past sins come up before them. Unless Benjamin could be produced, their conviction as spies appeared certain. And they had little hope of gaining their father's consent to Benjamin's absence. Can you see the torment? On the 3rd day, Joseph caused the brothers to be brought before him. He dared not detain them longer. Already his father and the families with him might be suffering for food. This do and live, he said, for I fear God. If you be true men, let one of your brethren be bound in the house of your prison. Go ye, carry corn for the famine of your house, but bring your youngest brother unto me, so shall your words be verified, and you shall not die. So he kept one hostage. This proposition they agreed to accept, though expressing little hope that their father would let Benjamin return with them. Joseph had communicated with them through an interpreter, and having no thought that the governor understood them, they conversed freely with one another in his presence. They accused themselves in regard to their treatment of Joseph. We are very guilty concerning our brother, in that we saw the anguish of his soul when he besought us, and we would not hear. Therefore is this distress come upon us. Can you see the purifying exercise which God's people have to go through? To agonize over their past sins. And look what has happened because of those sins, because of this, that, and the other thing that I have done. Look at what's happening to us now. They recount their sins. And then Reuben opens up. Reuben, who had formed the plan for delivering him at Dothan, added, Spake I not unto you, saying, Do not sin against the child, and you would not hear? Interesting exercise, isn't it? Therefore, behold, also his blood is required. Joseph, listening, could not control his emotions. And he went out and wept. On his return, he commanded that Simeon be bound before them, and again committed to prison. In the cruel treatment of their brother, Simeon had been the instigator and chief actor, and it was for this reason that the choice fell upon him. And he was left there in prison until they came next time. Purification exercise, yes? By this method, God works to purify and bring people to their senses. So, was Simeon's tribe able to abide among the 144,000? Revelation 7:7 shows him there. Let's just read it for comfort's sake. That these people, if we can identify with Simeon's cruel nature, judgmental, self-justifying and cruel in dealing with the wrongs of the heathen, those that are sinful people around us, and we harshly treat them, well, is there possibility for people like that to be among the 144,000 after the purging experience? There it is in verse 7. And of the tribe of Simeon were sealed 12,000. So no matter how cruel and passionate we might identify here, if anybody does, the fact is, it doesn't mean you can't be among the 144,000. You can, like Simeon, be in a prison and go through horrifying trials and be purified by going through it, by thinking over it and repenting. What must be the exercise of such people? We conclude with Ministry of Healing, page 487. Ministry of Healing, page 487, paragraph 2. Paragraph 2. So long as we are in the world, we shall meet with adverse influences. There will be provocations to test the temper. And it is by meeting these in a right spirit that the Christian graces are developed. So the temptation comes provoking us. And as we discover our characteristics such as cruelty and harshness of judgment, here it is that this is the way by which we are to exercise our Christian graces, by meeting these in a right spirit. If Christ dwells in us, we shall be patient, kind, and forbearing. Simeon wasn't forbearing, was he? And Levi. They came hard on those people. And cheerful amidst frets and irritations. Day by day and year by year, we shall conquer self and grow into a noble heroism. This is our experience if we're going to be among the 144,000. It says, this is our allotted task. But it cannot be accomplished without help from Jesus, resolute decision, unwavering purpose, continual watchfulness, and unceasing prayer. Each one has a personal battle to fight. Not even God can make our characters noble or our lives useful unless we become co-workers with him. Those who decline the struggle lose the strength and joy of victory. So what must be our exercise if we've got these sinful characteristics to conquer? It says it so plainly, does it not? To be patient and kind and forbearing, cheerful amid frets and irritations. But how can you do this? To conquer self, to grow into that noble heroism. This task, we cannot be accomplished without help from Jesus. We need help from Jesus. We can pray to him, but is that all we need to do? He does help us, but what else is needed? Resolute decision, unwavering purpose, continual watchfulness, and unceasing prayer. Each one has that battle to fight, and God can't help us unless we become co-workers with him by doing these things. And if we won't be among the 144,000, it is because we decline that struggle and therefore lose the joy and of victory and strength. What a beautiful illumination to what we must do to be among the 144,000. What an object lesson in Simeon and the other brothers who were also guilty, but Simeon the cruelest. And so God permits circumstances to take us there where we will go through our experience of purification. And as I was sharing this, it struck me. There are some of God's people that are going to be in prison during the time of Jacob's trouble, after the close of probation. Some are going to be in prison, but others are not. They're going to be out in the wild. I wonder whether it's the Simeonites that are going to be in prison. Interesting thought, isn't it? So, here we have another tribe that illuminates to us the understanding. Who are they? They come out of great tribulation. What are they doing? They are dealing with their past sins. They are remembering why they are meeting this experience because of their past action. And as we meet our experiences because of our past actions, like the sons of Jacob in their interaction with Joseph there, what a touching experience this is. May God grant us to really tune in to this work and not forget what we are studying here, because we want to be among the 144,000. That's what the Spirit of Prophecy says. We should strive to be among them. Here is the instruction. May God help us. And let's just read this last little phrase again so that we get it, we keep it very clear in our mind. What is the exercise? It says that our allotted task is help from Jesus, resolute decision, unwavering purpose, continual watchfulness, and unceasing prayer. Let's take hold of that so that we can be among the 144,000. Amen.